Hello, and welcome back to my channel. As someone who has kids, video games have become a big part of our lives. I played video games before we had kids. My wife and I got a Nintendo Wii when they first came out. My kids now have all the latest consoles and play games on the computer. I personally tend to stick to the classics. I have a handheld emulator that I use to play games, mostly NES, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis. So I was excited to find out that the Nationaal Videogame Museum was not too far away from us. It's in Zoetermeer, which is between The Hague and Utrecht. You have to book a time to go ahead of time, and you pay for the amount of time you're going to be there. So you could book from 10 a.m. to noon and pay €17.50. We were out and about, and I wasn't sure exactly when we'd be there, so I booked an 8-hour window, and it was €27.50 each. Then you're able to play anything in the museum for free. They had arcade games around the building, and then there were rooms where you could go in that had a theme. Like one was Nintendo and another was Sega. One had old school computer games like pre-Commodore 64. One thing that was cool was that each room had other decorations that were appropriate to the era. There were some cool old electronics and furniture in some of the rooms. I was an Atari kid, as my father had bought one when they first came out, and we played Space Invaders, Pac-Man, and one of our favorites was a game called Kaboom. You had a bucket and you had to move it back and forth in order to catch bombs as they dropped. My parents had divorced by the time the original Nintendo came out, so I never had one of those or a Super Nintendo. But I did get a Game Boy after they were released. I also got a Sega Genesis for Christmas in my early teens. From there, I was able to save up my own money to get a Nintendo 64. After exploring all the different rooms, we spent some time playing games throughout the arcade. I was happy to see they had this big Space Invaders game, which I always spend too much money on when we go to an arcade. Since all the games at the museum are free to play with entry, I was able to log in some time without hurting my pocketbook. Anyway, if you're in the Netherlands and are a fan of video games and/or have kids, it was well worth the visit. There's a parking garage right next door and a shopping center with restaurants just down the street. The museum has 3 levels, and on the top floor there's also a snack bar. I highly recommend it. Thanks so much for coming to my channel. If you guys have any questions about me personally, leave them in the comments. If you like these videos, hit subscribe and you can continue on this journey with me. Thanks so much, and be safe.